Hey, what's up? This is Zach here at the GM podcast in Las Vegas, Nevada. Super excited to be speaking with Jeff. Before we kind of kick things off, I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about, who you are and what brought you here today.
Sure. My name is Jeff Blankenburg. I work at DigitalOcean as the head of developer relations. And it's funny, I actually came from Amazon. So I was the chief evangelist at Alexa for the last
No
7 or 8
way.
years. Yeah. And so making the jump to DigitalOcean to kind of a smaller cloud and some of the things that they're doing there has been kind of a fun adventure.
So for those who don't know, can you talk us through like what DigitalOcean is?
Sure. So DigitalOcean, as I said, is it's a cloud services company, right? So we have servers and VMs and databases and all of the other things you'd expect to have from a cloud. And we just recently ventured into offering AI services too, right? So if you need dedicated GPUs, or if you just need a generative AI service spun up without all the work of like configuring and training everything, right? We do that stuff too.
So that makes a lot of sense. So kind of for someone who is coming to you guys, they have sort of like a set up solution. It makes it a lot easier to get involved.
Yeah, exactly. Like one of the services we have, we call App Platform. And if you have a GitHub repo, which everybody has at least one, right? If you take that GitHub repo, you can come in, say, hey, I want to run a Linux environment, or I want to run this or that. You choose the environment, you point it at a GitHub repo, and it just spins it up and runs it. It takes care of the rest for you. So you don't have to spend all that time setting up a VM and configuring and doing all the other work. You can just get your app up and running.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And sort of, can you talk about maybe what the difference is between maybe, this is a question I was going to ask, between what you guys are doing and AWS,
Oh,
and why you made the jump?
absolutely. So, AWS is one of the hyperscalers, right? You've got Azure, you've got Google Cloud. Like they're on a scale that is above everybody else. But where DigitalOcean really plays nicely, it's about developers in the community, right? This isn't about selling thousands of servers to a huge enterprise. This is about small and medium-sized businesses, enterprises that are they have a moderate cloud load, right? And they want to go someplace that understands them, gives them the service they're looking for, has the pricing they're looking for, and the support that really comes along with all of that. So that's the big angle for DigitalOcean versus going with someone like AWS. I mean, AWS has its strengths for sure. But DigitalOcean is about developers. It's about the community. They also do a ton of stuff in the open source community. There's a big event called Hacktoberfest, which just ended in October. I don't know if you've heard of Hacktoberfest, but it's a huge global thing where people all over the world submit pull requests to open source projects that they care about or love, and it's all kind of done in this motion of Hacktoberfest. And DigitalOcean's the company that runs that.
Super cool. Was there any projects that you saw that you were really hyped out?
It's interesting. There were a ton of interesting kind of blockchain projects that I saw that
Very
were
cool.
really
Well, we
getting
have a
out.
lot of Web3 followers,
I,
so.
I thought that might be the case. But I think it's across the board because it didn't have to be major PRs, right? It could have been that you updated their documentation or you just fixed something in a README or something like that. So, but it was something like 70,000 individual contributors and hundreds of thousands of pull requests that were submitted to all those projects.
And what made you, so I mean, because you have like such a cool background, I have to kind of dive
Dig in,
into that.
dig in.
So, what was that journey like, and what kind of brought, like, I'd love to hear sort of the
Oh,
journey of what it was like working, if you can talk about Alexa and everything.
yeah, I'd be happy
Yeah.
to. So it's interesting. I got into my career, kind of as the internet was blossoming, and spent a lot of time in the web and building e-commerce, that kind of stuff. And I started speaking at events, and that really was kind of what propelled me into what I'm doing today, head of developer relations. But I met folks at Microsoft, and that's actually where I got my first kind of big break in my career. Is I spent 9 years as a developer evangelist for Microsoft across their whole stack. But things like Windows Phone and Windows 8, I spent some time with those a lot. And while I was at Microsoft, me and a team of people, we have an innovation week every year where you can work on whatever you want that whole week. And we came up with the idea. They had just launched a service called Cortana, which was a voice assistant, right? Yeah.
I live in Seattle, so
Oh, yeah,
there are a lot of Microsoft
yeah,
stuff.
you've certainly heard of Cortana. And so we had this idea to build like a hockey puck device that you could like plug into a wall, and you could talk to Cortana, and you could make to-do lists, and you could play music, and you could do all the stuff that you might imagine you would do something like that. But this was 4 years before Amazon launched Alexa. And so we took it to the lawyers, and we are like, hey, we should get a patent on this. This is a really cool idea. And they told us, they're like, we're not even going to submit. No one would want this. And I was like,
Are you serious?
okay, cool. So it was always this kind of dream we had in the back of our heads. And so I was still working at Microsoft. I left to go to a little startup, and I heard about Alexa and that Amazon was launching this thing. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I got to find a way.
I had the first Alexa. I thought it was so
It
cool.
was so cool. And so I ordered that first one as well, that day one edition. And from there, I found my way onto the team and spent the next 7 years there, helping the product get better, building the developer community, doing all that kind of stuff. So it was an adventure for sure, but was so happy to get to work on something that I had pictured so much earlier.
What was that like from day one to last day?
I mean, it's certainly evolved, right? I mean, in the early days, it was this huge experiment that Amazon had lots and lots of funding for and things. And then eventually, like every great business, right, you've got to figure out a way to really turn a profit and make things better. And so I think, you look at Alexa today, it's still kind of churning and trying to figure out what it wants to be. But it was always the best place that I ever got to work on a project, because I had access to the product teams, I had access to the marketing teams, I had access to anyone that was involved with the Alexa team was really collaborative and cooperative, and we could do all sorts of cool things, which is why it saw the success that it did, was because everyone was willing to kind of work to move that thing forward. So yeah, it was amazing.
And that really did set the tone, I think, for AI and for that voice talking. Like, hey, like Alexa, like everyone knows,
Exactly right. And it's weird because when we think about how we talked about AI then, 7 or 8 years ago, is so different than we think about AI today, right? I mean, AI it was really just machine learning models that were sorting responses into buckets, and then you had pre-crafted responses for everything. And now when you see some of the things people are doing with AI, it's just remarkable how much content it's generating on its own. I just had someone reply to me on Twitter today that was very clearly an AI bot that was just responding. But I look back at their history, and they're generating so much interactivity because they like make a very nice comment about your post and then ask you a question that's like very engaging and like, hey, tell me more about the thing you just said. What a great way to generate kind of engagement and have some good conversations. Hopefully there's humans there too, but it was kind of cool.
It's brilliant. One of my favorite influencers, Tiffany Fong, and there's others too on X. I love Twitter and X and all social media, of course, but they have AI agents. So what they do, like I'm sure you already you know this, but for our audience, they'll scan like the entire profile and then make sort of a replicant of that person's personality that just lives online on its own, replies to posts, makes even pictures, because they can do that now.
Yeah,
it's super cool.
It is remarkable. And sometimes it's way off.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just so spot on. It's amazing. And it's weird to think about how, when I first started using things like OpenAI and started playing with those tools, how it looked like a toy, a game I was going to play with. And now, like, it's this integral part of how I work and how I live, and the way that I am so much faster at my job, both coding and like just producing content or writing documents or whatever. It's amazing. It gives you just a jump start on everything.
I agree. And I think what's really interesting to me is we kind of talk about AI. We just had Thanksgiving, and I kind of polled my family. I asked everybody, like, hey, who here uses AI in any form or that they think of? Right. They probably all use Alexa, but ChatGPT, things like that. All the young people were like, yeah, every single day. And my mom and all of them like, no, I don't know yet. Like, I don't know. And it's interesting. And why I say that is because there's so much more to go.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I've been caught saying a few times, AI is as bad right now as it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
It's only going to get better. It's only going to get more intelligent. I'm actually giving, I was mentioning earlier, I'm giving a talk in Dallas on Thursday that I call The Future of People. And it's a vision of like, what does this look like 10 years from now? And what are our lives going to look like? Because it's going to be dramatically different.
I got to get on a plane now.
Yeah.
That sounds super cool.
For sure.
So I want to kind of talk about your role in developer relations. That's, something that I've worked at Ripple and different software companies, and getting the relationships with developers is so important because they are your lifeblood. They build it. And so it's so important. And so how do you kind of approach this role, and, what gets you excited about talking to developers?
Well, anytime I get an opportunity to talk with a developer about what they're building, like to see that excitement and that passion just ooze out of them, that's the gold, right? But the way I think about developer relations as a whole actually comes from some thoughts I formulated while I was at Amazon, and it really cycles around that flywheel concept, right? They like flywheels at Amazon. And so the way that I think of developer relations is that you and your team, whatever the developer relations team is, start as developer zero. So if you think about like patient zero, same idea, right? The moment a new product feature or offering is available, they're the first ones to use it. They're the ones that are representing developers in the world inside your company, and they can say they're going to like this, they're going to hate this. Can we consolidate this? Can we fix this UI, whatever? You use that stuff intimately. You get very familiar with it. Now you are the most equipped to go give demos and presentations and share with the world, like, hey, here's how cool this thing is, and here's why you should incorporate it into whatever you're working on. And so you go out and you go virtually, you go on social media, you go to events like this one in Dallas I'm going to, and you go do all of those things, which puts you right in the forefront of all of those developers, right? All the people that want to use the products, that are customers of your company. So they talk to you and they say, "Hey, I like this. That's cool. I wish it did this. I could see my entire workload here, except I have this one other thing that doesn't work. So I'm going to use this other service instead." And you get all this feedback and this interesting ideas from all sorts of people from all walks of life, right? Hobbyists all the way up to guys that are building huge stuff inside giant enterprises. And you take that feedback and you consolidate it and you synthesize it and you bring it back to the product team and say, hey, here's what I'm hearing. These are the things that real developers are talking about our product, how they're using it, why it's interesting. They take that, they build that into their roadmap, they build new features, and now you've got that flywheel, right? Now you continue to use the new thing and you spin that cycle again.
For that data collection process, how much of that is AI?
Today, remarkably little.
Really?
Because it really is. I mean, obviously, we have all sorts of websites and things that you can allow people to submit requests and like, hey, this is a feature that I really need or whatever. But oftentimes, at least in the developer relations field, what I find is that we are doing most of it as part of a relationship, right? They joined our Discord and they're just talking to me about a thing, or they're at an event and they're like, hey, I'm building this thing. How would I do this? And I'm like, oh, you could do 95% of that, but you're going to need this extra thing to get you all the way there. It's lots of individual
Discord.
conversations. Yeah, Discord's a big part of it.
Developers love Discord. They got Discord and then they got gaming on the other screen.
Exactly right.
Exactly
right.
That's how you make the best apps right there. That's how you know the developer is locked in.
Yeah.
They're not on Discord, they're not a developer. I love that. Cool. So no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's quite all right. I was pretty much wrapped up. But the idea there is that developer relations it's in the name, literally about relationships. And so I have a team of 6 people around the globe, and our job is to make and build relationships, build communities, help people stand up user groups in their local cities so that other people can get together and talk about what they're building on DigitalOcean. And that's the really cool thing, is when you see people start motivating and organizing themselves, and we're here to help them obviously as much as we can. That's the really exciting stuff, is when you start to build a community and people can align together and you see startups spawn off because they just met each other through a meetup or something. It's cool.
So where would you say that DigitalOcean is now, and where would you like to see it in maybe 5 years from now? Because you had that boom, let's say at Alexa, went crazy, right? So you've seen that. Where do you see DigitalOcean going?
I don't know that I'm here to predict any booms or anything.
Not like that.
Yeah. But I think when I think about 5 years from now, I think that one of the challenges that I see with DigitalOcean right now is that if you think back, like, I'm kind of old, but if you think back to like 20 years ago, right? It used to be people talked about buying servers and mainframes and all sorts of stuff. And the saying was always, you're not going to get fired for buying IBM, right? Like, if you make that decision, everybody's going to be like, yeah, of course, that's what you should buy. That makes sense. And today I feel like there's a lot of people that feel like, well, I'm not going to get fired if I buy AWS or Azure or Google. Like, they're known names, they're these big hyperscalers. Like, that's not going to cost me my job just because I chose that as our platform. I feel like DigitalOcean doesn't get that kind of recognition. They're certainly not on that scale. I mean, they can handle most workloads, but they're not on the scale of the big 3. And so as we think about that stuff, I would love to be in the conversation. I think that DigitalOcean has a lot to offer, both price-wise, support-wise, otherwise. But that's the thing that I think will be the measure of my success while I'm there, is where do we stand in the market? is DigitalOcean one of those things that people say, hey, we should actually think about using that? That's the place we want to be. And I think traditionally DigitalOcean has been known as kind of the hobbyist cloud, right? That's where you go build your experiments and you spin up a VM for $5 a month and do that kind of stuff. And that stuff still exists and it will continue to exist. But I think DigitalOcean is in a position to be taken far more seriously, and I think they just need to build that reputation.
The name is so cool too.
It is cool, and we in every meeting we have, if you missed out on an ocean pun, like every time you gotta slide it in there somewhere, right?
The tide is coming in.
Exactly right. All right, we got to ride this wave, whatever. Yeah.
Love it. So kind of bringing it back to the event that we are at here today, AWS reInvent. What made you guys, come to this event, and how are you sort of engaging?
Well, we're doing a couple of things. We're actually hosting a happy hour tonight over near Paris. If you guys can join us, please.
Sure.
Please, I'll give you an invitation. But beyond that, we're doing kind of like man on the street stuff, a little bit like this, but a little more casual. Interviewing people, talking to them about what they're building and how they're building, handing out swag, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of a good engagement model for us, right? We've got a lot of people here that really care about the cloud, and as I mentioned, like we want to drive that awareness. We want DigitalOcean to be on the top of the mind when they're thinking about building things.
And awesome. And how many years have you guys kind of been a part of this? And
this is actually the first year. And
okay.
I'm not going to take all the credit for it, but I think that a lot of the newer people that have joined DigitalOcean over the last year or two, a lot of them are former AWS, and so I think a lot of them looked and said, we really should have an opportunity to play there. We are all very familiar with reInvent. We see the amazing caliber of people that come to this and that participate in reInvent. Let's go be a part of that crowd.
Yeah, and I've really noticed that high quality too. Like, it's been great meeting you. We've talked to some really fascinating minds in this space. What would you say for our audience is something that they should know about DigitalOcean that you haven't said so far?
I think there's two big ones for me. One is, if you haven't thought about DigitalOcean for building in the cloud, you should, because it can handle what you're building. But two, one of the biggest things we launched just recently is the AI capabilities. And so what DigitalOcean does well is makes the cloud simple. And so yes, you can spin up a VM and train your model and do all that stuff, but you can also just go in and pick a model that you want, and now you have a chatbot and you're off and running, and you can ingest data into it and train it and use it the way that you want without all the overhead of thinking about all the other tech and setup that you have to do. You can have a chatbot running off of your data in half an hour.
How would you compare that to a chat GPT or?
I mean, theirs is on a far larger scale. But if you think about let's say you run a law office and you've got thousands of briefs and documents, and you want to be able to talk to that entire library of documents, ingesting those into some storage and then pointing a chatbot at it. I mean, you're talking, maybe an afternoon and you're ready to go. And so now you can have conversations about what was the case that happened on December 21st, or what was the outcome of this thing, or what is the expected outcome of this case based on the history of what you've seen so far. So that kind of stuff is really powerful, and there's a lot of people that need that kind of technology. But if you think about a law office, they don't have an army of 100 developers to go build this stuff for them, and data scientists and everything else, right? So it's about simplifying it and making it accessible to everybody.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for the fantastic interview. I honestly learned so much.
Cool.
Make sure to follow DigitalOcean. They're amazing. I really enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, I'm looking for the happy hour too.
Thanks. Will do.
Thank you.
Hey, what's up?
But it's not something Genzio is afraid of.
If you want to survive, you got to build a hive.
No, we do not understand.
Ladies and gentlemen.
We're back at the Genzio Media House.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.